All right, everyone. Welcome back to your lunch hour here on PALS TV. We had a great start to the day, the start to the morning, heading over to Eastern Ohio and Steubenville, and then down to Southern Ohio and Gallipolis. To finish out the day, we're going to hang out in Central Ohio, starting out in Columbus, then AOTL, and finishing out in Heath. But for our lunch hour, we're going to join Phil in our Columbus program, where the last couple of weeks he's been giving us wonderful book club segments of Don Quixote, and really enjoyed the novel so far. And again, if you wanted to go back and read any of those previous chapters, you can find them on our website or the PALS TV episodes on your YouTube channel. So go back and watch those because they're very interesting, and it's been a wild ride so far for Don Quixote, and I can't wait to see where his adventures takes us today. So live from Columbus, we have Phil.
Welcome back, gang. You'll see I don't have a background because, again, foolishly, I wore a gray jacket and I would disappear. So, as to not be invisible, you're just getting the boring whiteboard behind me. We're going to continue on with Chapter 7. We'll probably finish that day, get in Chapter 8. So, we're not going to go over the entire story so far, but in the last couple of episodes, Don Quixote returned home, and all his friends and neighbors start burning his books. They think that's what's making him think he's a knight and act foolishly, basically. And so Don Quixote was just woken up after he'd been beaten up and lying in bed. He's got up and he's picked Sancho Panza as his squire, a local farmer, and they've just saddled up. And they are riding out to go right wrongs and, woe to the wicked, as the musical says. So let's go ahead and kick up our story. All right, so again, I've just saddled up. It's the middle of the night. They're taking off. And now Sancho Panza said to his master, "Your worship will take care, Senor Knight Errant, not to forget about the island you have promised me. For be it ever so big, I'll be equal to governing it." So Sancho says, "Look, I'm going to be your squire, but don't forget, I'm going to be a real estate owner. I'm going to get this big island, and I'm going to be in charge of it. And I don't care how big it is. You can count on me. I'll take care of that." Because particularly at this time, owning land means you've got money. That's where most of the people that are rich have their money from. The tenants have to pay them rent and things like that, farming, whatnot. To which Don Quixote replied, "Thou must know, friend Sancho Panza, that it was a practice very much in vogue with the knights errant of old to make their squires governors of the islands or kingdoms they won. And I am determined that there shall be no failure on my part in so liberal a custom. On the contrary, I mean to improve upon it, for they sometimes, and perhaps most frequently, waited until their squires were old, and then when they had enough of service and hard days and worse nights, they gave them some title or other of count, or at the most marquis, of some valley or province more or less. But if thou livest and I live, it may well be that before 6 days are over, I may have won some kingdom that hath others dependent upon it, which will be just the thing to enable thee to be crowned king of one of them." Don Quixote says, "Yeah, I didn't forget about the island. And I know a lot of other squires, after a whole life of going out and adventuring with their knight, they would get some little island or a tiny little valley, and it wasn't much. And they were all beat up and old, and they just didn't enjoy it much. But before the week is out, I think we're going to get a big kingdom, and there's going to be kingdoms inside that kingdom. And you're not just going to be the count of some little valley. You will be the king of some kingdom that works for me. You're going to get a lot better stuff than other people do, and fast. We're going to get this done in a week. Nor needst thou count this wonderful, For things and chances fall to the lot of such knights in ways so unexampled and unexpected that I might easily give thee even more than I promise thee. Don Quixote says, I know that sounds like a lot, but I am such a great knight. It'll probably be even better than what I'm expecting to give you. Oh, we're definitely getting to chapter 8 because it's right here. I didn't realize how far we were through chapter 7. In that case, said Sancho Panza, if I should become a king, those miracles your worship speaks of, even Juana Gutierrez, my old woman, would come to be queen, my children infantes. I said, well, if I become a king, that means my wife is going to be a queen. That'd be amazing. My children would be princes and princesses. Well, who doubts it, said Don Quixote. Of course you'd be the queen. Oh, not clicking. There we go. I doubt it, replied Sancho Panza, because for my part, I am persuaded that though God should shower down kingdoms upon earth, not one of them would fit the head of Marie Gutierrez. Let me tell you, senor, she is not worth 2 maravedis for a queen. Countess will fit her better, and that only with God's help. Well, I don't know that my wife ought to be a queen, because I don't really think she's worth being a queen. Yeah, maybe some minor nobility, but not queen. And she's going to stretch to be minor nobility. Leave it to God, Sancho, returned Don Quixote, for he will give her what suits her best. But do not undervalue thyself so much as to come to be content with anything less than being the governor of a province. Well, whatever your wife deserves, we'll get what we need. That will be God and destiny, and she'll get what she gets. But you're really good, so you're going to get a big chunk of land. I will not, senor, answered Sancho, especially as I have a man of such quality for a master in your worship, who will know how to give me all that will be suitable for me and that I can bear. And it says, oh, I'm not worried. I know that you're a great guy and we're going to get great stuff done. And that I will be rewarded for everything we do together. So on to chapter 8. Oh, and this is a really good part. Anybody that knows anything about Don Quixote, this is the part everyone remembers. So pay attention. At this point, they came in sight of 30, 40 windmills that there are on plain. And as soon as Don Quixote saw them, he said to his squire, Fortune is arranging matters for us better than we could have shaped our desires ourselves. For look there, friend Sancho Panza, where 30 or more monstrous giants present themselves, all of whom I mean to engage in battle and slay, and with whose spoils we shall begin to make our fortunes. For this is righteous warfare, and it is God's good service to sweep so evil a breed from off the face of the earth. What giants? Said Sancho Panza. They come out, there's a bunch of windmills on this plain as they're riding across. And Don Quixote looks at the windmills and says, look, giants! And giants are evil. I'm going to go beat up all the giants. That'll be like a great thing for me to do. You should definitely beat up giants if you're a knight, because giants are bad. Sancho says, I don't see any giants. What are you talking about? Those thou seest there, answered his master, with the long arms, and some have them nearly 2 leagues long. Look, your worship, said Sancho, what we see there are not giants, but windmills, and what seem to be their arms are the sails that are turned by the wind to make the millstone go. Don Quixote says, oh, those windmill things, those are giants. And Sancho says, those are not giants, those are windmills. Probably a trick of the light, but you're not seeing right. It is easy to see, replied Don Quixote, that thou art not used to this business of adventures. Those are giants. If thou art afraid, away with thee out of this, and betake thyself to prayer, while I engage them in fierce and unequal combat. Don Quixote says, no, those are definitely giants. But I get, you might just be afraid because there's 30, 40 giants out there, and you're just going to pretend they're windmills. But if you are, just relax, and I'll go beat up all the giants. Don't worry about it. So saying, he gave the spur to his steed Rocinante, heedless of the cries Esquire Sancho sent after him, warning him that most certainly they were windmills, and not giants he was going to attack. Don Quixote spurs up his horse, gives it a kick in the sides. The horse goes, Rocinante, the horse goes running towards these things. I'm going to beat up these giants. And Sancho's back there left in the dust saying, they're windmills. They're windmills, not giants. Don Quixote ain't paying any attention. He's going to get him some giants. He, however, was so positive that they were giants that he neither heard the cries of Sancho nor perceived, near as he was, what they were, but made at them, shouting, fly not, cowards and vile beings, for a single knight attacks you. Don Quixote doesn't even listen to nothing Sancho's saying, and he doesn't notice the whole way up. He's right on top of these windmills, and he is certain they're giants, and he's yelling at them, don't run away. There's 30 of you, just one of me. I'm going to take you down, though. A slight breeze at this moment sprang up, and the great sails began to move, seeing which Don Quixote exclaimed, though ye flourish more arms than the giant Briareus, ye have to reckon with me. So the wind comes and the sails of the windmill start moving, just as Don Quixote's getting up. So he thinks the giants are waving their arms about him, about to hit him. He says, look, you may have too many arms, but I'm still going to beat you up. So saying, and commending himself with all his art to his lady Dulcinea, imploring her to support him in such a peril, with a lance in rest and covered by his buckler, he charged at Rocinante's fullest gallop and fell upon the first mill that stood in front of him. As he drove his lance point into the sail, the wind whirled it round with such force that it shivered the lance to pieces, sweeping with it horse and rider, who went rolling over on the plain in a sorry condition. Don Quixote was charging away and says, Dulcinea, lady that I love, I'm doing this for you. And he runs right into one of the windmills as the sail's coming by, and it rips his lance out of his hand, and he and the horse go flying across the ground, bouncing around. Now let's pull this up. Sancho hastened to his assistance as fast as his ass could go, and when he came up, found him unable to move, with such a shock had Rocinante fallen with him. So Sancho sees that Don Quixote's fallen, and he comes running up to help him. Don Quixote can't even get up. His horse fell really hard right on top of him. They are beat. Bring it up again. God bless me, said Sancho. Did I not tell your worship to mind what you were about? For they were only windmills? And no one could have made any mistake about it, but one who had something of the same kind in his head. Sancho says, I told you these were windmills. Clearly, this is what was going to happen. I don't know, anybody with anything but wind in their head could have mistaken these for giants. Hush, friend Sancho, replied Don Quixote. The fortunes of war, more than any other, are liable to frequent fluctuations. Moreover, I think, and it is the truth, that same sage Friston, who carried off my study and books, has turned these giants into mills in order to rob me of the glory of vanquishing them. Such is the enmity he bears me. But in the end, his wicked arts will avail but little against my good sword. So you remember that they told Don Quixote the books were all taken away by an evil wizard named Somethington. Don Quixote thinks it's Friston. He says, well, the same wizard just made all these giants turn into windmills and make me look like a fool, and then I don't get to beat up giants like I'm supposed to. But don't worry, I'm going to get that wizard eventually. It's going to happen. God ordereth that he may, said Sancho Panza, and helping him to rise, got him up again on Rocinante, whose shoulder was half out. And then, discussing the late adventure, they followed the road to Puerto Lapis. For there, said Don Quixote, they could not fail to find adventures in abundance and variety, as it was a great thoroughfare. So Sancho helps Don Quixote back up, gets him back on his horse. The horse, all right, shoulders all beat up. Rocinante's not going to be walking real well. Certainly not going to charge great. And Don Quixote says, look, we're going to go to this next town. There's a lot of people that come through there, a lot of roads that cross. And we're definitely going to find a great adventure in this next town. For all that, he was much grieved at the loss of his lands. And saying so to his squire, he added, I remember having read how a Spanish knight, Diego Perez de Vargas by name, having broken his sword in battle, tore from an oak a ponderous bough or branch, and with it did such things that day, and pounded so many Moors, that he got the surname of Machuca, and he and his descendants from that day forth were called Vargas y Machuca. Here it says, the giant, who was turned into a windmill, but definitely was a giant, broke my lance. But I remember a story about this one knight. He broke his sword, and he just picked up a stick, and he beat up a bunch of people. I probably ought to work. I mention this because from the first oak I see, I mean to rend such another branch, large and stout like that, with which I am determined and resolved to do such deeds that thou mayest deem thyself very fortunate in being found worthy to come and see them, and be an eyewitness that will with difficulty be believed. Don Quixote says, I'm telling you the story, not just for fun, though it is a good story. But the next oak tree we get to, I'm going to get me a stick, and then I'm going to do some really great stuff. In fact, it's going to be so great that when you tell people what you saw, people aren't going to believe that you saw something that great. Be that as God will, said Sancho. I believe it all as your worship says it. But straighten yourself a little, for you seem all on one side, maybe from the shaking of the fall. I don't doubt it. Clearly, you're going to be very famous and beat people up with a stick. But you're all slumped to one side on your horse. You got whacked pretty good by the windmill. Maybe that's what's making you lean over like that. That is the truth, said Don Quixote. And if I make no complaint of the pain, it is because knights errant are not permitted to complain of any wound, even though their bowels be coming out through it. I said, yeah, I definitely got whacked pretty hard by that giant. It's hurting. It's hurting real bad. But I'm not complaining. I'm not talking about. If my guts were falling out of me, I would not be complaining about the pain, because I'm a knight, and we don't do that sort of thing. If so, said Sancho, I have nothing to say. But God knows I would rather your worship complained when anything ailed you. Look, if you knights can't talk about why you're hurt, or that you're hurt, what am I going to do? I'm just a squire. But yeah, I would rather you told me when you're hurt. That would be better. For my part, I confess I must complain however small the ache may be, unless this rule about not complaining extends to the squires of knights errant also. Sancho says, if I'm hurt at all, I'm going to complain about it. I'm going to let people know that something hurts. But since knights can't complain, can squires complain? Because I'll stop if I'm not allowed. Don Quixote could not help laughing at his squire's simplicity, and he assured him he might complain whenever and however he chose, just as he liked, for so far he had never read of anything to the contrary in the order of knighthood. Don Quixote says, look, you complain all you want. Squires are allowed to complain, at least as far as I know. I haven't heard that they're not, so we're going to assume you can complain all you want. Go ahead and complain. Sancho bade him remember it was dinner time, to which his master answered that he wanted nothing for himself just then, but he might eat when he had a mind. Sancho says, well, as long as I can complain, let me complain because I haven't eaten and I'm hungry and it's time to eat. Don Quixote says, well, I'm not hungry, but whenever you want to eat, you go right ahead. With this permission, Sancho settled himself as comfortably as could on his beast, and taking out one of the alforjas what he had stowed away in them, he jogged along behind his master, munching deliberately, and from time to time taking a pull at the bota with a relish that the thirstiest tapster in Malaga might have envied. And while he went on in this way, gulping down draught after draught, he never gave a thought to any of the promises his master had made him, nor did he rate it as hardship, but rather as recreation, going in quest of adventures, however dangerous they might be. I don't think we covered these. We used these words. We didn't talk about them when everybody saddled up. So where are they? The alforja is just a kind of bag that you keep food in. So Sancho's reaching into that bag. He's grabbing himself something to eat. And a bota is a leather sack that carries some kind of liquid. Water, very often wine, particularly because water wasn't very safe to drink at this time, particularly when you're out running around in dirty streams. Actually, the streams are the safest water. The water in the cities back then, that wasn't any good. Now it's all fine. We have sewage treatment. So he's got himself something to eat. He's got himself something to drink. He's just coming along. Just, this is kind of tough doing this, but man, this is a good time. I don't have this much fun when I'm on the farm. No matter how dangerous it's going to get, this is pretty good. Didn't click right. Finally, they passed the night among some trees, from one of which Don Quixote plucked a dry branch to serve him after a fashion as a lance, and fixed on it the head he had removed from the broken one. So they get to some trees, and they say, oh, we'll camp here for the night, take a rest. Don Quixote says, remember I said I was going to beat people with a big stick? Great. Got this big stick here, and a lance has like a sharp spear point on it. So he took that off of the old one, and he shoved this on this new branch that he's got. Come on, click right. All that night, Don Quixote lay awake, thinking of his lady Dulcinea, in order to conform to what he had read in his books. How many a night in the forest and deserts, knights used to lie sleepless, supported by the memory of their mistresses. Don Quixote, instead of sleeping, just thinks of his lovely lady Dulcinea. Well, a bunch of other knights did this. You just stay up all night and you think of the lady you're doing this all for. Not so did Sancho Panza spend it. For having his stomach full of something stronger than chicory water, he made but one sleep of it. If his master had not called him, neither the rays of the sun beating on his face, nor all the cheery notes of the birds welcomed the approach of day, would have had the power to waken him. So Sancho, he's had some nice wine, he's had a nice meal while he's been riding all day, he's tired. He's not staying up thinking about his wife. He's going right to sleep, and he's sleeping straight through. He ain't waking for anything. Now, the only thing that's going to wake him up is Don Quixote saying, Sancho, time to get up. So then he gets up. On getting up, he tried the bota and found it somewhat less full than the night before, which grieved his heart, because they did not seem to be on the way to remedy the deficiency readily. So Sancho said, well, what's here in my wine bag? Oh, it's not full. It was full before I started drinking it. I don't think we're going to get to a wine shop anytime soon. That's kind of disappointing. Don Quixote did not care to break his fast, for, as has been already said, he confined himself to savory recollections for nourishment. Don Quixote says, I don't even need breakfast. I'm thinking about knightly stuff and thinking about my lady Dulcinea. All that is just enough for me to eat. No food for me, sir. No. They returned to the road they had set out with, leading to Puerto Lapis. and at 3 in the afternoon, they came in sight of it. Well, let's get back on the road, and hey, look, there's the town we were going to. Here, brother Sancho Panza, said Don Quixote when he saw it. We may plunge our hands up to the elbows in what they call adventures. And observe, even shouldst thou see me in the greatest danger in the world, thou must not put a hand to thy sword in my defense, unless indeed thou perceivest that those who assail me are rabble or base folk. For in that case, thou mayest very properly aid me. But if they be knights, it is on no account permitted or allowed thee by the laws of knighthood to help me until thou hast been dubbed a knight. So look, here's the town. We're going to get into a bunch of adventures. All right. If I'm fighting some knights, they might look like they're winning, but you cannot help. If you're a knight, you can fight knights, but nobody else can. Now, if it's just some peasants and they're beating me up, go ahead and help. You're a peasant, you can beat up all the peasants you want, but you can't fight knights. Most certainly, senor, replied Sancho. Your worship shall be fully obeyed in this matter. All the more as of myself I am peaceful, and no friend to mixing in strife and quarrels. It is true that as regards the defense of my own person, I shall not give much heed to those laws, for laws human and divine allow each one to defend himself against any assailant whatsoever. So just don't worry, I am not getting between you in any fight. I don't need to fight anybody. But if some knight comes picking on me, I'm going to whack him back. There's no law says I can't defend myself. That I grant, said Don Quixote. But in this matter of aiding me against knights, thou must put a restraint upon thy natural impetuosity. I will do so, I promise you, answered Sancho, and will keep this precept as carefully as Sunday. Don Quixote says, look, yeah, if you get beat up, defend yourself all you want. But you can't help me if I'm getting beat up by knights. I know you really want to, no matter what you say, but you can't do it. Sancho says, and no problem. I ain't fighting any knights. They beat you up. While they were thus talking, there appeared on the road 2 friars of the order of St. Benedict, mounted on 2 dromedaries, for not less tall were the 2 mules they rode on. This is just Cervantes trying to be clever. Look, here come 2 monks, and they're riding camels. Not really camels, they're mules, but they're really tall mules, and they look like camels to me. They wore traveling spectacles and carried sunshades, and behind them came a coach attended by 4 or 5 persons on horseback and 2 muleteers on foot. So they're coming along. It's quite hot out, a lot of sun. They're protecting themselves from the sun, as should we all. Don't want to get burned. And right behind the 2 monks, there's a great big stagecoach, basically, a carriage. And there are a bunch of people around it on horseback, about 4 or 5 of them, and then 2 people leading mules. And the people leading mules will, of course, be carrying all the baggage for whoever's in the coach. In the coach there was, as afterwards appeared, a Biscay lady on her way to Seville, where her husband was about to take passage for the Indies with appointment of high honor. So there's this fancy lady. She's the one in the coach, and she's headed to a big city because her husband's about to take off overseas because he's got a really good job out there. The friars, though going the same road, were not in her company. But the moment Don Quixote perceived them, he said to his squire, either I am mistaken, or this is going to be the most famous adventure that has ever been seen. For those black bodies we see, there must be, and doubtless are, magicians who are carrying off some stolen princess in that coach. And with all my might, I must undo this wrong. So these Benedictines, they wear a black habit, robe. Everyone in their order does. And Don Quixote says, these are not monks. They're wearing these black robes because they're evil wizards. And they've kidnapped this princess in a coach. And I am definitely going to beat up these wizards. This will be worse than the windmill, said Sancho. Look, senor, those are friars of St. Benedict, and the coach plainly belongs to some travelers. I tell you to mind well what you are about, and don't let the devil mislead you. Those aren't wizards. Those are holy men, monks. Don't beat them up. That is not a kidnapped princess. She's just going along, minding her own business. Just some rich woman. Monks, rich woman, not wizards and princess. Don't get this confused. I've told thee already, Sancho, replied Don Quixote, that on the subject of adventures thou knowest little. What I say is the truth, as thou shalt see presently. Those are definitely wizards, says Don Quixote. That's definitely a kidnapped princess. You need to relax. I got this. Once I beat him up, you'll see that I'm right. Just trust me. So saying, he advanced and posted himself in the middle of the road along which the friars were coming. And as soon as he thought they had come near enough to hear what he said, he cried aloud, "Devilish and unnatural beings, release instantly the high-born princesses whom you are carrying off by force in this coach, else prepare to meet a speedy death as the just punishment of your evil deeds." Don Quixote sees these wizards, but definitely monks, walking along, and he gets in front of them on the road and says, "Hey, you guys stop. I'm gonna beat you up unless you release the princesses right now. It's your only option." The friars drew rein and stood wondering at the appearance of Don Quixote, as well as at his words, to which they replied, "Senor Caballero, we are not devilish or unnatural, but two brothers of St. Benedict, following our road. Nor do we know whether or not there are any captive princesses coming in this coach." The monks say, hey, we're not evil wizards. We're just two monks, just walking along, riding along. And there might be captive princesses in the coach behind us. We don't have any idea. They're just behind us. We're not with them. No idea what you're talking about. "No soft words with me, for I know you, lying rabble," said Don Quixote, and without waiting for a reply, he spurred Rocinante, and with leveled lance charged the first friar with such fury and determination that if the friar had not flung himself off the mule, he would have brought him to the ground against his will, and sore wounded, if not killed outright. Don Quixote's heard enough. I ain't fooled by you. And he charges him, and he's gonna possibly kill the first monk that he comes to, except the monk dives out of the way, falls on the ground. The second brother, seeing how his comrade was treated, drove his heels into the castle of a mule, and made off across the country faster than the wind. The other monk says, "Hey, this crazy guy dressed like a knight just tried to kill us. I am out of here." And he takes off running. Oh, too far. Oh, we'll go there. Come on, highlight. Sancho Panza, when he saw the friar on the ground, dismounting briskly from his ass, rushed towards him and began to strip off his gown. Sancho says, "Oh, Don Quixote just beat up a monk. Oh, this isn't okay." So he rushes up, jumps off his ass, and starts taking off his coat and stuff so he can take care of this poor monk that just got knocked to the ground. At that instant, the friar's muleteers came up, and that's what he was stripping him for. Oh, sorry, not his gown. He starts taking off the robe of the monk so we can see if he's hurt. And then the guys leading the mules with all the baggage, they say, "What are you taking off this monk's robe for?" Sancho answered them that this fell to him lawfully as spoil of the battle, which his lord Don Quixote had won. Sancho says, "You might think I'm trying to help this guy, but my boss the knight just beat up this guy, which means I get this fancy robe. That's what happens. Squires get this." The muleteers, who had no idea of a joke and did not understand all this about battles and spoils, seeing that Don Quixote was some distance off, talking to the travelers in the coach, fell upon Sancho, knocked him down, and leaving hardly a hair in his beard, belabored him with kicks and left him stretched breathless and senseless on the ground. Without any more delay, helped the friar to mount, who, trembling, terrified, and pale, as soon as he found himself in the saddle, spurred after his companion, who was standing at a distance looking on, watching the result of the onslaught. Then, not caring to wait for the end of the affair just begun, they pursued their journey, making more crosses than if they had the devil after them. The guys leading the mules said, I don't know what you're talking about, you get this robe, but we ain't having it. So they start beating up Sancho, and they beat him bad. As soon as they got him beat, they helped the monk that got knocked down up. The monk says, I am out of here too. And he goes and catches up with that other monk that already took off. They're not going to see what else this knight guy is doing. Don Quixote was, as has been said, speaking to the lady in the coach. Your beauty, lady mine, said he, may now dispose of your person as may be most in accordance with your pleasure. For the pride of your ravishers lies prostrate upon the ground through this strong arm of mine, unless you should be pining to know the name of your deliverer. Know that I am called Don Quixote of La Mancha, knight-errant and adventurer, and captive to the peerless and beautiful Lady Dulcinea del Toboso. And in return for the service you have received of me, I ask no more than that you should return del Toboso, and on my behalf, present yourself before that lady and tell her what I have done to set you free. Don Quixote's up by the coach where he thinks a princess is. Really, just a rich lady going to see her husband before he leaves for his new job. And Don Quixote says, don't worry, I know you were kidnapped by the evil wizards, but I just beat him up. You can do whatever you like now. However, since I did rescue you, I'm doing all this for a lady called Dulcinea. So you should go to her hometown and let her know what I did. Let's go through a couple more. One of the squires in attendance upon the coach, a Biscayan, was listening to all Don Quixote was saying, and perceiving that he would not allow the coach to go on, but was saying it must return at once to El Toboso, he made at him, and seizing his lance, addressed him in bad Castilian, and worse Biscayan after his fashion. Begone, caballero, and ill go it with thee. By the God that made me, unless thou quit his coach, slay as thee art as here a Biscayan. The end of what the Biscayan actually says is confusing all the time. It's written that way because, once again, Cervantes is showing his prejudices. He doesn't like Biscayans and thinks they're kind of stupid. So he says he doesn't really know how to speak Spanish. And this is why he's saying this. But basically, one of the people at the coach, who's from Biscay, says, we are not turning around like this person wants us to. So he grabs Don Quixote's stick and says, look, take off, let us go through. We ain't turning around. If you do, gonna beat you up. Don Quixote understood him quite well and answered him very quietly. Thou wert a knight, as thou art none. I should have already chastised thy folly and rashness, miserable creature. Don Quixote says, look, you're lucky you're not a knight, because you ain't grabbing my stuff. Telling me that nonsense, or I'd have beat you up already. To which the Biscayan returned, I, no gentleman. I swear to God thou liest as I am Christian. If thou droppest lance and draw sword, soon shalt thou see thou art carrying water to the cat. Biscayan on land, Hidalgo at sea, Hidalgo at the devil, and look, if thou sayest otherwise, thou liest. And the Biscayan says, you're calling me not a knight? Put down the stick, pull out your sword, and we're going to fight, and I will beat you down. I think we'll go ahead and stop there before we get into the fight between the Biscayan and Don Quixote. We'll kick that over. Hopefully we have all enjoyed this lovely story so far, particularly the bit about the windmills. Everybody loves Don Quixote and the windmills. And now we'll go ahead and kick it on over to continuity. Unless anybody's got anything to say. Anybody want to say hi? Hey, how you doing? That's all we got. And continuity's here.
Hi, Bill.
How you doing, Lauren?
Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Aaron.
What's going on? How's your day? Good.
It's all right.
Good. Good. I'm sure you're excited because you know what's next. Your crew's up. Our AOTL game. So
Yes.
perfect start to the afternoon. Gila, you have a question? Think you know what it is, Phil?
Oh, I think I might. Jonah, can you flip Gila's mic for? Oh, Gila, you need to push the button. When are we starting? As soon as we get everything worked out. We're going to try as fast as we can, but we need to get everything worked out. Make sure it's safe for everybody, and we'll get a hold of you.
Look for a call here soon, Gila. All right. Well, thank you again, Phil, for that book club segment. It's our 7th one now, so it's been fun. It's been a wild ride. Can't wait to see where Don Quixote takes us next week. So have a great rest of your afternoon, Phil. And for everyone else, come back and join us here in another location over in downtown Columbus now, and join AOTL for our afternoon program here on PALS TV. So thanks, everyone. Go use the restroom, grab a snack, come back and join us here soon. Thanks, Phil.
Take care, guys.